Welcome, everybody, to our first community call in some time. Obviously, you've seen my face before. Entheox, our community manager, is showing his face for the first time. And we have our new COO, Andrew, all the way from bright and sunny Australia. And today, really, we just want to
Yeah.
really just wanted to kind of talk about some of the things that have been happening behind the scenes, where we're headed on the tech side of things, which Andrew is now running, why that shift has happened, and some of the opportunities that are connected to that. We want to talk about some of the new developers that we're bringing on, and how we're transitioning some of the old team to a new project that'll be connected to TRESR. And yeah, I guess we'll just kind of dive right in. And the goal is to start doing these once a month so that all of the stuff that happens behind the scenes on a regular basis, because things move super quickly, gets better communicated, and we can make sure that everybody has a deeper understanding of how to engage with the platform as it grows, how you can support by being an affiliate and referring other projects that you're in, what some of that success looks like, and moving forward, how we'll try to make that more and more permissionless. So I guess to start with, let me see if I can pull up my chat. Oh yeah, now I can see the chat. And can you still hear me? Perfect. So I'm going to start with an introduction of why Andrew is here and the value that he's already contributed to the project behind the scenes. So over a year ago, I brought in Andrew as a business coach, an energetic coach, and just somebody to help me see the bigger picture of what we were building in TRESR. Because what happens as an entrepreneur is oftentimes the vision gets too close to the chest and you start to make consolidations in order to make things happen faster. And you lose sight of how it all connects in with that larger vision that you originally had. And so Andrew was kind of my eyes and our eyes as a community to see that bigger vision and that bigger picture, and to consistently try to dial me and our team in towards that. It started off where he was just working directly with me and really helping me feel some of my big feelings about the frustrations of being an entrepreneur, being a leader, how to be a better communicator. And as he got deeper and deeper into what we were building with TRESR, there just was a natural overlap because Andrew has over 25 years of technological transformation experience. I'll let him speak to it because I'm not finding the right words about it, but he is a deep systems thinker and somebody who knows how to connect dots in reverse, which was kind of where we were at in the project. You know, there's very different phases and things that are required when you're building out a proof of concept and then a prototype around a small handful of partners, versus what it looks like to now how do we scale that to hundreds and thousands of partners. Those are two very different ways of thinking about a project. And fortunately, we're moving into the stage where it's necessary for us to further decentralize. As we've spoken to venture partners and partners that might be interested in putting money into buying keys, etc., one of the biggest concerns that they had, and really that all of us should have, was very important person risk. Everything in TRESR was running through my nervous system and through Mikkel's nervous system. And if either of us had gotten knocked out for whatever reason, we would have been, it could have been managed unless both of us got knocked out at the same time. But it made these investors nervous. And so bringing Andrew in was part of setting a larger frame for what does it look like to build systems that run things rather than people that run things. one leads to the other, but they're different ways of thinking about how technology connects and how people engage with that technology. And so Andrew, over the past few months, has been extracting all of that nervous system level content from my nervous system and from Mikhail's nervous system, creating better documentation for us, and then onboarding some new developers that are helping in that process of really figuring out what do we have now and where do we need to evolve it to match some of these larger partners that are potentially wanting to sync up with us. So I'll pause there. Andrew, maybe you can introduce yourself, give a brief intro, and maybe just talk about what your experience working with me and TRESR over the last year has been up until present moment.
Cool, thank you. So yeah, as John has mentioned, I've got 25 years experience in business and digital transformation. I actually started when I was 15. The first application I ever wrote was for the declaration of dangerous goods, where it took an hour and a half process down to about 15 minutes, just by understanding the things that were missed on the surface and embedding that directly into an application that allowed it to be solved for. Now, back then, unfortunately, I didn't know enough about business, and I sold it for about $900. And this improvement of an hour and a half to 15 minutes, they were doing this 3 times a day by 4 people over 10 years. So that was a big business thing for me. But moving forwards from that, over the years, I've worked with different organizations to be able to extract this key person risk, this information that key people have, and then be able to model that into something that, one, can be embedded into a system, but two, can also be shared across other people. Because when we extract all that knowledge and are able to draw it and bring it together into this clear documentation, visualization, others start to engage with it and get a deeper understanding. And then what happens is it's now not all on the one nervous system, rather it can be a shared understanding. And then by embedding it into systems, the system itself becomes the nervous system instead of the people. And therefore now you've got this element that works with it. So that's the technical sides of my history, like the roots of it all. But over those years, I've worked with really large organizations, like for those here that are from Australia, Lowe's Menswear. Did some work with them where their take-home lay-by, their self-financed credit card in essence it is, but they were doing this before Afterpay even existed. They were having so many troubles with that I came in, had a look at it, was able to restructure everything that I saved them $1 million per year. I used to be a interim CIO for a company called Modex, modular handrails and balustrades in the manufacturing industry. They were having problems with trying to implement an ERP system, spent 2 years trying to even just get it in the door and were hemorrhaging money on it. I came through and had a look and instantly was able to show them that that system was never going to work for them because of the intricate details that the level they were playing at was beyond what this off-the-shelf system was ever going to support for them. So this being able to understand the deeper essences and nuance and how do we refactor and restructure so that it accounts for that and facilitates scale. And that's really where my genius zone lies within. So as I've been working with John, because I very much have a spiritual essence inside to me, it's actually how I tune into these key people and subject matter experts, being able to tune into how they're perceiving and getting them to adjust me in the process as well as I'm extracting that information. So I use that skill in coaching as well, being able to create a space that allows someone to feel through those big feelings and not having to have to create that space for themselves while they're going through something. And that's where John and I were working initially and exploring all of the different energetic stuff that came up and seeing where does this fit into the bigger picture. And then as John said, over time it became evident that there was so many synergies, not just within TRESR, but across a lot of areas that him and I operate in and want to go in for investment purposes. So That's where the partnership's been explored down that path. Now, coming in, we've had to look at where is TRESR at as a whole enterprise, and where's it going to next? Like, what's the octave shift that TRESR's currently going through, and how do we need to adjust how we've been going to this new octave shift? And maybe you can say a bit more into this, because otherwise I'll just get into too much technical. But there is a shift that's happening. Every startup, every business has to go through this type of shift where you go from focusing on the functions that you need to deliver to re-expressing that in a form that the form automatically gives that function. So how you solve for this versus how you solve for that are two very different ways. And one of the challenges a lot of startups and enterprises face is sunk cost bias. And that's something we had to really make sure that we didn't get caught in that trap. And how do we take everything that's been understood and all of the great stuff that's here and re-express it in this other structured way, like structured differently, so that it facilitates scale?
Yeah, and maybe a different way to say it, or at least part of what you're saying, is that when we first started this, it was, how do we deliver the white paper as written? And part of my nervousness as an entrepreneur was, well, I just want to make sure that we do what we said we were going to do. And that was fine. That got us to a proof of concept that started making money. We're now at this pretty consistent baseline of $15,000 in revenue every single month. And so the proof of concept showcased that there was a revenue avenue in what we were exploring. However, what ended up happening in that process was a lot of things got daisy chained together. We threw a lot of noodles against the wall to see what would stick. And there's technical debt in all of that, that costs us money, both in time and efficiency as we move forward, in how we're able to serve different types of clients that are maybe outside of that initial proof of concept. And just in the fees that we're paying every single month for some of these services that were daisy chained together in order to just test, was our idea and the way that we were thinking about this correct? And that was fine as delivering the service as written. But really, the stage that we're at with the partners, when I'm on sales calls now, and as we're talking to tier one partners that have a very specific idea of what their brand needs to be in concert with whoever they're working with, we have to be able to encapsulate their vision in our vision, which means that we have to grow what we're doing and how we interact with those partners. So you've been hearing me say for over a year that we need to have all of these gamification things and scan rituals and bonus points and all of these things that are designed to psychologically create incentivized behavior in these projects. And that's what all the partners that we're talking to want. However, we need to be able to build what we have in such a way where we can translate all of that data and filter it the way that each of these projects need to do and connect it into some of the existing gamifications that they have. Because one of our original theses that we tested as a hypothesis that wasn't right was that people would want to use our point system. That turns out to not be the case. They want to use their own point system that they already have, or whatever they're already using. So what they're interested in is an API that allows them to connect their existing gamification and functions into some of the scan features, the geolasso, and the things that are connected to our physical products. And also, there are some projects that want their own point system and they want to do something custom. And so there's a lot of nuance in here that requires us to be able to control things at the bones level before we start to build out some of the muscle and fat for some of these projects. And so it really requires reimagining who is interacting with TRESR and how are we interested in growing them as a project, as a brand, as a person, etc. Because there needs to be some kind of a psychological, or even, you could call it spiritual framework of how somebody evolves in your ecosystem. And as degenerates, we know that as gamification. So we know that as badges and points, and basically aligned incentives that move you along a path. But what we need to decide before we can effectively apply all of that gamification is, what is the path that we're even bringing someone down that not only drives value to them personally, but to the ecosystem as a whole? And so what Andrew and I have been working on, and that to some extent we've shared in some of the channels on Discord, and that we'll continue to share in these regular monthly calls now, is something that we've been calling a journey of influence. Because ultimately, the thing that is getting monetized in crypto and Web3 is attention. And so your ability to create influence and to attract influence is ultimately what gives you speculative value and allows you to make deeper and deeper connections with the people around you, or to become someone who's defining which connections and influence are important. And so through this journey of influence, we want to be able to essentially create a scale that somebody can self-select on, whether you're already an international brand with well-known IP and you're looking to figure out how to integrate that into a Web2 pipeline, how to handle rights management, or it's the first time that you're ever using an AI creator tool and you just want to play around and see, could I actually sell something online? Those are two very different use cases. And right now, our product treats them both the same. We need to be able to build out the back-end nuance that will help each of them and basically rewrap the product for each of them based on where they're at on that journey of influence. Andrew, do you want to speak into that a little bit more?
Right, I was about to. That's a really good point right there as well. This element of what we're attracting is very different types of use cases coming through. And as you're saying, the current product treats them all the same. And the reason for this is that the current product had been highly focused on the shop sides of things and it just being a shop. And one of the transitions that we actually had to make was re-expressing this underlying vision that we had, because initially it was something like Shopify, the shop that had all these add-ons pieces to it. And one of the adjustments that I worked on, John, to make is not have that as the core analogy underneath, but rather have it around a community engagement and brand management platform that then has these extra pieces. And therefore the shop is a piece within that. So instead of the shop being the frame that everything fits within, we extended the frame out even further to be a brand platform, and therefore there's a shop functionality within it. And what this did by making this type of shift is brought our focus to be around the very specific key piece, which is the scan. Because everything about TRESR is around post-scan experiences. The shop, the manufacturing, they're all foundational pieces that are necessary to get the merch out there, and most importantly, to get the NFC chips out there, because from there, this is what will facilitate all of the post-scan experiences going further forwards. Now, a part of the actual tech review, if I just take a moment to go into that as well, has been around looking at, from this post-scan experience mindset, what part of the tech do we have to in-house versus what can we leave with off-the-shelf solutions? Because this level of platform building, we have to be in tight control of those core elements. And there's certain, like when you build out a prototype and a proof of concept, taking a lot of stuff off the shelf to test it and get an idea of how it should work and how it shouldn't work is a really good way to move quickly and iterate quickly. But what you then have to do, and this is why sunk cost bias is a massive big issue, is you then have to start letting certain ones go and do it yourself internally. Because when you find what to pivot around, like us with the post-scan experience, it then becomes, well, these things are all core and critical, and we have to make sure that we own that. And therefore, these other enabling ones, we can partner with others for that. And these other supporting ones around the outside, we can also partner with others for those. But this core in the middle, we need to have control, we need to be building it, and we need to be managing it. So that's been a lot of the work has been around re-expressing the vision from this new pivot point, and then reflecting on everything within the actual current tech stack to go, what tech decisions do we now need to make anew?
Yeah, and I think maybe another way to think about this as we move from function to form is that the prototype required that we just did what it did something that we said it was going to do. We showcased that we could actually achieve what we wanted to achieve with the NFC chip, and that was the blockchain authentication. But we were building towards a technical outcome, like how do we get something to get authenticated on chain? And really the reimagination that we're talking about now is, what is the business model that all of this has to live in so that we can experience growth into, far beyond $15,000 a month, into the hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars a month, as we figure out how to manage all of this IP. It's a road to get to there, but there is a business model that now that we are thinking about how revenue ties into the overall structure, and revenue being directly connected to how behavior happens in the platform. All of this allows us to kind of take that next stair step up, and begin to connect in at the commerce level, not just the tech level. So there's a big difference between nickel and diming shirts at the print on demand level, which is essentially what we're doing now, and working with some of these international agencies who will throw $250,000 at an event activation without even batting an eye. We want to be playing in the latter field. And what that means is rethinking the way that we allow groups like that to connect into our technology.
And this whole re-envisioning and restructuring hasn't just been at the tech level, it's been through the whole business. I've been in with the accountants, been in with the different structures, the whole banking platforms we're now using, taking it out of, because it's all been running out of Jordan's personal bank account. So moving that into business structures, and how do we go further with that? And I'm very quick at getting up to speed, but I've spent the last 7 years learning how to structure businesses for investment platforms, and worked with, in Australia, there's a concept called a sophisticated investor, which is somebody who's been recognized by the government as being an investor that they can look after themselves. So I went and learned from sophisticated investors how to think and perceive differently. And I spent 7 years learning how to model and structure legal documents and banking structures, finance, and all this type of stuff. Now, there is a difference between Australia and the US, but I'm learning that extremely quickly, just as much as I've had to learn the whole crypto DeFi game, everything extremely quickly. Like, all my experience has been in Web 2, from businesses and technology. So this is my first hand at Web 3. Now, just to give you guys an idea of how quickly I've had to learn, I understand that there's 3 layers, at least, for at a high level, for the whole blockchain crypto DeFi. So literally blockchain, crypto DeFi, blockchain being a decentralized ledger, and all the major networks, blockchain, so it's a decentralized ledger. Cryptocurrency is then put on top of that as a mechanism to facilitate the whole, how it all works and operates. Where I really loved with how it went even further was the whole smart contract and what that made available. Because instantly when I looked at smart contract, and I actually came up with a mental model and got Mikkel to verify this with me. And the mental model I came up with was a decentralized database with serverless functions all tied in together. And what that then made available was this whole ability to do a decentralized network of information that flows amongst it all. And now you get the ability to create your own tokens on top of the underlying cryptocurrency sides of things. But that brings a whole bunch of different extra challenges. And this is where DeFi comes into place. DeFi is something I'm still learning, but I've been able to work out the core principle within it and how it operates from a base principle in comparison to standard economy is the difference between what's known as over collateralization versus under collateralization. And that's a whole technical thing that I'm still trying to dig into. So I'll see if I can, as I'm learning it, I can simplify it. But I guess this is also where I work. As I said, I take the essence of something and create mental models to make it easier to digest. But anyway, maybe you can regroup on everything I just shared, John.
Yeah. Well, I think ultimately what we're pointing at is that Andrew has been involved in many conversations around the business side of things, around the manufacturing side of things, and now the code side of things. And we're getting him up to speed now on the DeFi side of things, because ultimately all of those things have to live within the business model that we're creating. And so one of the things that I've loved about Andrew is that he just dives in and gets his hands dirty. And so you'll see him in Discord asking questions about the keys and commenting on VE Treasure and all of these things as he's getting up to speed with how those things work as well. But it's actually really interesting to work with somebody who sees things in systems and models, but didn't have a preconceived notion about crypto, because he's seeing it without all of the filtered learning and emotional trauma that we've had as degens. And it's an interesting to have him reflect crypto and Web3 back to me actually opens up avenues of thought that I hadn't thought about, or I hadn't thought about in a long time. And I think it's a very interesting perspective for us to be exploring this, because the right questions get asked and we're not leaving anything to chance or common sense, and we're making sure that all the terms are properly defined. And so ultimately there's a type of legalese in Andrew's understanding of what we're doing that wouldn't be there if he already had a preconceived notion about it. And so I think that's allowing us to dot some of the I's and T's better than if we already assumed that we knew what was happening here. And I think that has become most prevalent in our one-on-one conversations each day, but also as we speak with partners. It's really interesting to have Andrew talking to somebody who is a Web3 native about Web3, because he uses language and terms that they've never heard before, and it actually helps them see a more holographic image of what it actually is when they hear it in new language, because it forces new neurons to fire. And anyhow, I think that's been useful as we talk to some of these tier 1, tier 2 partners, for them to know that there is somebody who's thinking about this at a philosophical level, and thinking outside the box of how normal Web3 people might think about it. So we can dive more into that philosophy and unpack where we think we're headed directionally with that. But what I wanted to do was maybe tie it into what we need as a team in order to expand. So one of the things that's happening right now as we extract all of this nervous system information from Mikkel is that as a team lead and as an entrepreneur, what you're always looking to do is, where is somebody most lit up and passionate? And it's been clear for a while that Mikkel is really passionate about something called reflective AI, this ability for AI to reflect your thinking back to you and give you a deeper sense of who you are. And as we were building out the trading card technology and having conversations in the community about Dungeons and Dragons, Mikkel brought in one of his friends named Isaac, who is a Dungeons and Dragons mogul in his own right, like organizing things all over New Zealand around Dungeons and Dragons. And the two of them really got into a riff on how the trading card technology could be used to solve some problems in that world. I don't want to dive too much into that, because we're going to do a separate call with Mikkel about what that project looks like, but it's called Tap Tavern. And really, Tap Tavern is going to be one of the first kind of decentralized projects that is building into this new structure in a way that is utilizing the AI, but in a more permissionless, like not asking for permission, like running the project how they want to run it, but ultimately we'll be handling the fulfillment. We think that if we can have a whole network of projects like this, some of which will have as in-house case study ventures and some of which will just connect in because the API is there and we don't even know what they're doing with it other than we're fulfilling their orders. But we think that this can be an interesting part of a multi-tier strategy for scaling because it essentially takes the volume that we have now in our project and bolt more volume onto that via the API. So we can get more into what that project is. You'll meet Isaac, you'll meet Mikkel in another call. I did a video interview with them that I'm cutting together now, and we'll share that. But what it means is that Mikkel is going to be moving into being a project lead on Tap Tavern, and we're extracting all of his nervous system knowledge of how the current system in TRESR has worked so that we can continue to grow and innovate it and connect it into this larger business model. We brought on a new front-end developer named Santiago. Really great guy, understands front and back end, has worked with Statista and really understands how online conversion works, how optimizing front ends kind of ties into sales. And so he's been a really good person to look at kind of this proof of concept and help us reimagine what it needs to be in order to break our 9% conversion goal that we want to be able to have to move beyond the kind of plateau of 15,000 a month that we're at right now. Then Andrew has brought on another developer named Tirawatt. And Andrew, do you maybe want to talk about Tirawatt and how you had actually seen some of his blog posts beforehand and we're like, oh, it would be really great to work with somebody like this, and then we ran an ad for a developer and he actually applied for it. So there was some interesting synchronicity there, but maybe you can talk about what you saw in Terawatt and why you felt he was an interesting addition at this phase of the project.
Yeah, sure. So to give a bit of history as to how I actually came across him, I'm a big fan of using languages like F# for backend, primarily because this type of system is more to do with information flow than it is to do with behavioral sides of things, or at least this stage of the project is a lot to do with that. And F# has really good ability to build that form-based structuring. So I was doing a search for F# developers just to start getting a feel for it, and Tirawatt came up in my search, and I'm like, okay. So I just put a bookmark on his name and left it at that, went looking through some of his stuff. And when it came time to transition, one of the core things is to move from Node.js being the backend into F# for many different reasons, especially around the whole experience platform sides of things going further. There's a few critical decisions that F# makes more sense. So when we put an ad out on Upwork for an F# developer, we had a ton of them come through, and the vast majority of them just took the actual ad and put it through AI to try and get some sort of response back. And Tirawatt was one of the ones that took the time to actually respond to it. And both John had flagged him as being a potential as well. And as soon as I saw him, I was like, oh yeah, here's my bookmark that I'd already found of him. And we went looking through a lot of his work where he'd taken on and embodied the principles of it's known as what was it? Object orientation, functional coding, and especially F#, because F# is not full functional like Haskell. Excuse me when I drop into tech speak. I feel it's important sometimes, especially if we're all going to be a part of a tech business. So F# isn't as dogmatic about functional coding as like Haskell is. It does have some object orientation realms, which is why it's extremely useful in different realms. So yeah, when Tirawatt came into that, we just had conversations with him, negotiated, and was able to get him on board. And he's been getting up to speed by just porting the existing functionality from Node.js to F#, and that helps build out an understanding and helps centralize our all of our understanding about the models, and has just been 100% in, just jumping into it, going, okay, what do I need to know here? Where do I find this?
And one of the interesting things about Terawatt is that he's already built some projects on Cardano, and he does have Haskell developer experience as well. And Cardano has their own coding language called Plutus that is based in Haskell. And so the reason that Cardano did that is that Haskell is what all the banking software is written in. So all the legacy banks use Haskell for their ledgers. And so Plutus is basically an updated version of Haskell that allows for more integration into the blockchain and into all these different coding languages. And so that's how you write a contract on Cardano. And so it was kind of just, we had already decided we were going to go with Tier Y, and then we found out that he already had he'd already done some stuff on Cardano, that he understood Plutus, and so anyhow, just seemed like an interesting thing given some of the conversations that we've been having on the Cardano side. And ultimately, the goal is to reproduce the current prototype in F sharp, which gives us more control over what we do with all of those things, and build everything around scan experiences and creating what we have been calling internally scan rituals. So right now, there's really not a reason to scan your shirt more than once. And you could argue that maybe there's not even a reason to scan it at all, because you get the NFT and then it's like, what do you do with it? We want to build out scan rituals where every 24 hours or 72 hours, you can receive points for scanning, and really still engaging the initial vision of having this geo lasso that we can use to work with some of these tier 1 events that we're talking to, so that we can use the NFC technology to basically act as a kind of digital passport. One of the events that we're talking to wants to do is basically have it where we do these trading cards. There's 10 to 20 different characters, and you get one of these cards randomly in your badge when you check in at the event. But then they have 20 different vendor sponsors that they want to make sure you go to their booth. And so each vendor will have a particular card there. And when you go to a vendor, you get that card and you collect the NFT to showcase that you were actually there, and we can geo-lasso it to show that you were actually at the event. If you collect all 20 of those while you're at the event in a certain time period, that collection of 20 then reveals a new NFT that can be redeemed for a larger merch set, like an event hoodie, t-shirt, hat, etc. And so this is one of the things that we can really double down on is using NFC technology to drive real world behavior. It essentially what Facebook and Google did for online behavior, we can do for real world behavior. And there's a huge marketplace for being able to do this. And if an event can say, hey, if we give you 1,000 trading cards, we can guarantee you that people are going to be beating a path to your door because they're going to want these trading cards, then it makes it so that their sponsorships are more valuable. They can charge more money for those sponsorships, and that then plays into being able to pay us the agency fee for helping them sculpt all of the gamification around that. So that's one microcosm of an infinite number of things that we can do to drive behavior in the real world. And this isn't a new conversation. We've obviously been talking about this for a long time, but we're finally at the place where those scan rituals are going to be something that's actualized, and that we actually have a deep enough control layer on where we can build into some of these existing points and platforms that other projects are using. Because a big part of the resistance that we get is somebody says, well, we already have a point system, we don't want to use yours. And we don't have any way to tie into their point system right now. And so it's an immediate no, but it's always a no with an asterisk. If you ever allow us to jump in to connect our point system into your tech, we would be more interested in using it. And so ultimately, that's part of the pathway moving forward that we want to be able to cater to.
Yeah.
I'll go. Yeah, go ahead. Finish that out, and then I'll go to a question.
Well, I was going to say, like, that whole geo-lassoing is only one part of a playbook. There's a playbook that John did up, and things like limited drops, promotion mode, collector mode, obviously geo-lassoing, I'm gonna pronounce this wrong. Gotcha, geisha.
Oh yeah. So Gosha machines. So
Gosh,
so
machines.
most of what Andrew just said are things that we've talked about before, but what basically the way that we're designing the new experience API is that if you claim your garment, so I claim my No Chilio shirt that I'm wearing right now, and now I have that digital twin in my wallet. Well, now it knows when my phone scans it and I'm logged in, it knows that I have the NFT. So it opens what we call collector mode, which gives me certain functionality that's only available to me as the garment owner. So these are seeing my different scan rituals, seeing provenance on what's happened with the shirt, points, things like this. However, when anybody else scans it, so if Enthiox and I go to a music festival and we're meeting a bunch of new people, we can have all of them scan our sleeve, and when they scan it, it's going to open it up in promotion mode. And promotion mode is basically a landing page that pitches the project or the creator who created the shirt, and it gives them an opportunity to put an email address in to have more information sent to them, or to join potentially like a private chat or something that connects them into that community in the future. And then they'll have a set period of time where if they purchase that garment within that set period of time, so Enthiox meets somebody at a music festival, they scan his shirt, they're like, "Oh my God, I love Pudgy Penguins. I got to go get that Pango shirt." And so now when that person buys it, Enthiox will get an affiliate commission and points connected to it, basically whatever the creator has defined. And that person will get a coupon because they purchased it through someone that they met. And so this creates a really interesting real world affiliate program, which is something we've talked about before, but now the way that we're structuring things around the experience API and these post scan rituals makes it so that we'll actually be able to actualize that and then tie the reward system into whatever that project's reward portal is.
Mm. And one of the key pieces that is actually going to make this all work from a in real life perspective, it's the scan ritual, but from a technological perspective, it's being able to decode and decipher scan intents. So if someone scans, what does that mean? And being able to understand the bigger picture context of where this scan sits within the whole element of what the person's up for. So there's all these different metrics that we're going to have to work with to be able to discern what does this scan mean. And that's going to be the core of our platform, because when we can derive what the scan means, then this is what will facilitate journeys being sent in different directions, and the whole platform can be built out from there. So basically, we're translating scans into real life events, and those real life events mean something. Once we have that meaning being built out, this is where whole platforms can be built on top of, and whole experiences can be built from that. Part of those experiences we will build in the TRESR platform, and the rest we'll leave open to either having some sort of shop that someone can build out an idea of an experience that works with certain ways that scan experiences come through, scan intents, and then they can just sell that on the shop, or you can just hook into the APIs and do it yourself. And we're going to have to work out also how to have it as a two-way street, because there's some events that happen outside of our control, but we just need to pipe them in so that they get translated into this whole scan and experiential based meaning.
Yeah, because think about the iPhone, where when you buy an iPhone, it only has like 7 or 8 native apps on it. Apple didn't go and build a million different apps. What they did is they created the right environment and the right way to engage with the iPhone technology and the right monetary incentives for developers to come in and then build out a million different use cases, which we all know as the App Store now. Apple, of course, takes 30% of all of those sales, and that's why Apple is one of the most cash-rich businesses in the entire world. We want to have a similar structure in a more decentralized way where people can build on our iPhone, which is the NFC tech connected to physical garments, connected to physical objects. There should be a marketplace where if somebody has some harebrained idea for some niche or industry that they're in, and they want to be able to tailor something specifically, they shouldn't have to use our generic 7 apps that we have. Of course, we're going to have generic things that most people fit into, but they should be able to build out something very specific for their particular event, their particular community, and their particular niche or industry that they're in. And that becomes the TRESR App Store, which then we can take a percentage of sales. And so if you think about an event that is sometimes spending $500,000 on organizing their sponsors and making sure that the sponsor packages are set up. Well, if we work with one of those events and their development team builds some kick-ass thing that has an insane conversion rate, and now we have a case study on how well it worked in their event, well, they can make back their development cost by just open sourcing that and putting it into the App Store. Maybe it costs them $100,000 to build this kick-ass app. They put it in the App Store for $20,000 a pop. Now we can go and sell that to all of these other events, and TRESR takes a percentage of all of those sales. Ultimately, I think that's where this can head to, and we should be thinking about it from a model of how do we, as the tech, as the iPhone, as the deliverer of the base level technology, grow not only a community of super users, but also a community of super developers who recognize the profit potential of building into our tech world.
I love that analogy. And I'll use it just to dip back down into the technical things one more time, because I think this is really good. You've painted this awesome picture from how the business sides, but if we look at that tech thing and what was the real innovation that allowed iPhone to start with, was they were translating different things to mean stuff. What does a swipe mean? What does a double tap mean? All of that meaning translation, which got embedded into the phone itself, into the operating system, into the whole ecosystem, that is the core piece that actually allowed the smartphone to come into existence and for Apple to carve out this position. So that's what's going to be what drives everything further with it. Being able to create that bigger picture, that platform that others are able to come into and be a part of, and choose TRESR to be that partner for that platform that they build on. And we have to get these translations right so that it becomes logical and conceptual building blocks that they don't have to think about these details, because we've thought about it and the platform automatically does it for them. And therefore they can just have these new ones that make sense to them, and then they can build out experiences based on these new concepts and language.
Yeah, that's actually a great way to think about it. We should call it TRESR OS, the TRESR operating system, because it really is like, what are the base level functions that somebody needs to be able to tap into to make somebody scanning meaningful? And it's the scan intent, it's where they are, it's the geoliso, it's the zero party rights, it's the ability for them to move in and out of collector mode versus promoter mode. Those are all the base level things that become the TRESR operating system that now other teams can build into. And so we can do that. We already have the functionality to be able to scan and claim the digital twin. What we don't have is the functionality for somebody else to do that same thing. And that's the larger context and frame that we're building now. It is now that we have the proof of concept, what is the translation of that operating system, and how do we define it in our tech stack so that other people can tap into it and use it as a paintbrush that they paint with? Because we don't want to be the limiter on the creativity for what can be done in TRESR. The most fun part is when it's opened up enough that any agency can come in and buy credits and build whatever cool thing they want with it.
Very much.
Just gonna jump in here real quick. I only have a couple minutes and then I gotta drop, but I'm sure a lot of people in here are wondering right now, Like when? When launch? When are we launching TRESR OS? What's the timeline look for that?
Very good question. I'm gonna have to answer it the same way I answered the same type of question that was put into the chats before. I don't like to give those types of when-based answers until we've got enough of an understanding of exactly how these things need to piece together. Because all the existing prototyping was around the shop sides of things. So this platform one, we now need new prototypes to help facilitate that. And one of the first ones within this was redesigning the designer tool. Because at the moment, we get the designer tool from, I think it's Imagely. And that's a core piece of the platform. So it's a core tool. Relying on Imagely will then it puts a glass ceiling, it shoehorns everything to go further. It was great for being able to prototype to get everything up and running, but to move forwards, we actually have to redevelop it. So that's what Santiago is currently working on. And we can hopefully do up a Loom video on that soon, because we've done some initial structuring of how it should look like. Not in the sense of, oh, how do these things look on the page, but how does the underlying concepts structure, and how do we build out these components so that they all work to this underlying model? That's what we've been working on for the last week and a half. And Santiago's made some real progress in this, and especially considering he's a part-time developer at the moment. So that's one of the first pieces that's going to be put in place, because that model of how, let me take a step back. What the platform's built around is a holarchy. Now, holarchy is a bit different. Most people will see it as a hierarchy. Hierarchy has something at the top that then controls downwards. A holarchy is drawn the same way, but the understanding is a bit different, in that the higher things are emergent from the lower things. But anyway, just think of it as a hierarchy if it makes it easier for you. We have to start at the top, which is the overarching context, which is a brand. A brand then has collections, collections then have designs, designs then have products. And how we actually model all of this is what's going to allow the platform to scale and grow. And a lot of the intricate details in that modeling we have to do in the design tool, because there's certain things we have to front load to make it extremely efficient for manufacturing and everything to go further with it. So that's what we're currently working on, is taking everything that we've learnt from the current shop and the current implementation, and building this new creator tool, and also the community and brand platform around this concept. And that'll allow us to then redo the shop in a way that it's in alignment with these levels. Because at the moment, the shop just goes, we just sell products, and therefore it's all separate products. And even though there's an idea of a collection, the form of it and the feel of it is not in alignment with people's intuitive understanding of how a collection should work in a shop. So we're starting with that. And once we've got that prototype done, then we can go, all right, this is how long it's going to take us to finish building that out. And that's how we're going to have to take it, one function at a time in this agile type approach, and go, here's the next one we have to do. Great, let's go and do a prototype. Let's get some quick understandings around it. Now we can go, here's the next piece that goes with it. So a lot of my work is trying to get out in front of what type of functions do we need, and be able to set up the developers so that they can start to prototype and play in this area and get these learnings, and do that as quickly as possible, and not have to take months on end. Like, the current progress has been a week and a half. And yeah, once we get this one or two things dialed in, I'm definitely going to do a Loom video on it, so you can really start to see the difference between how it currently is versus where we're headed with it. And this will be the cadence that I'm looking to really drive the team towards.
And one thing that I'll say that is different about how we're developing some of these features now is, before, I would go to the UX team and I would say, design this feature, and then the development team would design to what the UX team had done. And then what would happen is we would realize, we didn't actually think through some of this functionality in the actual design process. So now we have to go back and fix some of that. And so this is where some of the duct taping of things together happened, is that because we were starting with the visual design, it wasn't the design wasn't emergent from the functionality. Yeah, I know you got to go, Anthiox. We'll see you. The design wasn't emergent from the functionality. Rather, the functionality was being shoved into what we had assumed the design was. What I like about how Andrew has been approaching this with Santiago and Tirawa is that we're starting with the functionality this time, so it looks uglier, but it allows us to make sure that it's actually going to function the way that we want to function it. And then we can wrap that functionality in a design and make it pretty. And I think that's one of the things that's going to allow us to build out more robust feature sets and ultimately have it serve users better. So that's one piece of it. The other thing that will allow us to move forward more quickly is growing revenue. And that either means minting more keys, it means, people purchasing treasure from the OTC, or it means what my larger focus is now that Andrew has taken over some of the project management that I was doing regularly, is growing the agency side of things. Andrew and I are of the opinion that we can either convince one of these partners to just buy up all the keys, or if they don't do that in time, Andrew and I will just buy them all up. There's an opportunity for us to basically take what Andrew and I have always been good at, which is bringing on clients in the agency world. And we've decided to no longer just limit that to Web3 clients. We just decided, you know what? Let's run all of the different type of clients that we've ever run through this agency. We'll figure out where everything lands after that. But let's get some revenue going and driving into TRESR. Let's make sure that our time is being compensated through that revenue in the agency, and then we can just personally be buying keys as well, as a doubling down on our own position and our own conviction that this is going to be ultimately a project that is successful and has financial legs beyond, the current moment and the current revenue. So the faster that we can increase that revenue on the agency side, on minting out the rest of the keys, and on OTC sales, the more that we can take some of these part-time developers that we brought on and turn them into full-time, which obviously doubles the speed at which we can work.
I love where you're going with that as well, because one of the things that we see that's actually really going to drive this whole further forwards isn't just the tech, it is really that whole agency sides of things. And there's two sides to when we talk about the agency, there's actually two sides to it. There is John's business, Awaken Local, which is the Web 2 version. And we call it Web 2, but think of it more in the sense of non-artistic creation. And then there's going to be eventually a treasure agency. And as I'm trying to get us to shift away from this whole Web 2, Web 3 distinction, because it's more to do with the treasure agency is artistic creation and IP that's based on artistic sides of things. So we're building into both of them to try and get this up and running and get it moving. And we're taking the same sort of approach of prototype first, then make it look pretty. But instead of trying to do it all in treasure, we're focusing the agency stuff on the Awaken Local sides of things, so we can get these quick learnings of what's needed to build out this new version of agency-based stuff that's based on decentralized principles and all the understandings that really come from Web3. So it's taking all that and extending it beyond Web3 into the rest of the world. So being able to prototype this to the side, one, we can actually start paying ourselves, because John and I haven't been paid from this. And it allows us to build our position out and then double down on our position within TRESR and take all the learnings we're having from that to bring into the actual creator brand agency sides of things, which was something we've been speaking about for a while. A few of you probably heard of us talk about creator brand agencies and that sides of things. So we're extending our personal investments to go further out, to be able to take a lot of the burden off of Treasure and the current investment sides of things, so that all the investment stays within the tech, because we need to build out that platform. And once that platform's in place, it then facilitates us to continue to build out the creator brand agency sides of things, which is what's going to take Treasure so much further, because we don't just want to be the platform that people operate with. We want to be the actual brand that people identify with. Like, most people probably haven't heard of what Azure is, unless I say Microsoft Azure, in which case it's the cloud platform. Great, well and good. There's plenty of other cloud platforms out there. So that's a utility-based brand, Azure is. We don't want that. We want someone to have an identity with it and to go, yes, I'm a part of Treasure and the community and the whole creator brand movement and everything that goes with it. And we will have the utility sides of things, but we want to go so much further. We want to be the place that enables creators to build out global brands and to really connect and have a rich community around that brand and that creation they're doing. And
yeah. So we can probably put a pin in that for now. That gives you a lot to chew on. There'll be a recording of this if you want to watch this back, or if you had to drop off, then you can continue to watch where you dropped off. If there's any questions around that, feel free to drop them into the chat or raise your hand and you can come up. Before we drop off, I did want to briefly just talk about, one of the things that's been proposed by the community, which is essentially changing some of the parameters around how voting escrow or VE Treasure works in the bonus pool. And so if you haven't seen it, make sure that you go into the announcements and see what the current proposal is. It is winning by a majority now, but I know that there's been a lot of back and forth on it. And the idea is that right now, VE Treasure is connected to your wallet and cannot move. And so if your wallet gets compromised, there's nothing you can do. There's no way for you to move it. And that was by design, because we didn't want voting escrow to be transferable. We wanted you to have time in the project in order to acquire that VE Treasure. VE Treasure and all of the levers in the bonus pool are ever moving, though. That's why we call it a game, because everything is set up as a peer-by-peer pool where your partition of each of those liquidity pools or rewards pools changes based on what other players are doing. And so there's not a set it, forget it solution to carving out a percentage of the bonus pool. You have to consistently be doubling down on your staked treasure and how you're engaging with those other levers, how you're engaging with voting power in order to maintain a position in the pool. Otherwise, other players will just gobble up your percentage, and your percentage will become so infinitesimal that it doesn't matter. All of this to say, the decentralized mechanisms and the time-based commitment for getting VE Treasure will remain, but we thought that as an incentive to encourage people to mint more Pearl keys, which allows us to accelerate the plan that we just kind of laid out, it would be interesting if you could take some of your staked treasure and basically burn that into a key and capture your the associated voting escrow or VE Treasure value to that key, making the key ultimately more valuable and potentially have speculative value. That seems to have legs. People seem to like that idea. And so I'm just bringing it up because if there are any questions, we can address those. But it seems like the consensus so far is that we should go ahead and do it. But what amount of treasure do we allow to be burned into keys? And so what I will likely do tomorrow is take some of the suggestions for the amount of treasure that can be burned into each Pearl key. I believe the suggestions are 69,420, 100,000, and maybe 250,000 treasure. I'm going to go ahead and put that up as a soft vote before we move this to an on-chain snapshot. And we'll just kind of see if there's a consensus around one of those numbers. But ultimately, this puts more pressure and drives more value for those Pearl keys. And if you already have a Pearl key, that would be grandfathered in. And the way that the formula would likely work is that we would take the total staked treasure or potential of that VE treasure, so staked treasure times 100, divided by the 4,400 and change pearl keys, and that equals around 80,000 treasure. So we could hit a little bit above that or a little bit below that, but I'll lay that out in a soft vote tomorrow so that everybody kind of understands the current state of the conversation, and we can decide together which of those numbers make sense, and if we want to move forward with making these pearl keys more valuable and something to that it makes sense for everyone to acquire. I don't think there's anything else to say around that other than the biggest reason for doing this is the more keys that we mint, the more we can fund the dev team that we have and allow them to work more hours and move more quickly. It also allows the space for running a larger ad budget into some of the tests that we're doing around the projects, which ultimately allows revenue to drive up, and so everything is kind of right now we're still in hyper startup mode where initial funding allows us to grease the wheels more and move more quickly. We can still get where we want to get, but of course the question is always when, and the more that we can grease the wheels, the faster that we can get there. And so I don't need to beat a dead horse. I think that I've spoken to that wholly. Is there anything that you would add as kind of a newcomer to the DeFi project and the way that you're thinking about the keys, Andrew?
Yeah, it's a good question. I see the DeFi game and the keys as, even though it's all within Trezor, is different to the shop and the creator brand platform. And how I relate to it is the whole creator brand platform is supporting artistic creators in their entrepreneurial journey. The DeFi game I see as the investorship journey and being able to step into being an investor. So being an entrepreneur is and an investor are actually two different things. There's a lot of overlap and a lot of similarity, but they are two different ways of perceiving and operating within the world. And when I look at the actual game, I see it as investorship. And what are the different forms of investorship? And investorship is really about enabling. How do you enable something to go further forwards within it? Entrepreneurship is enabling as well, but it's more being of service. So how do I create something to be of service? Investorship is around enabling entrepreneurs to be able to go further with it and to have your investment become an asset in its own right. So something that is of service for it, but you're also receiving something in return because of it. So there's all these incentives that have to be considered and thought about. And how do we work with the different dynamics, and how do we work with who's currently in play versus when things shift to a different phase? How does that come into place? So there's a lot of how would I put it? There is a lot of different dynamics that come into play, and I see this game as an awesome way of being able to step into the whole investorship sides of things and to dabble and play and to learn without having to put your whole self on the line to do it.
Yeah, and obviously the purpose of games and crypto are to create an abstraction on top of that investorship for legal purposes, and there's a lot to learn about incentivizing behavior in the DeFi game as well. One thing that we haven't done well, and that as Andrew and I are mapping all these pieces so that he can get up to speed with what all of those different levers are, many people here on the call helped write the white paper, so you intimately understand it. Andrew's still getting up to speed on these things, but one thing that is obvious is that we need a leaderboard, and we need to define it as a game, and there needs to be a reason that you would want to be number 10 on the leaderboard, and this plays into something that we also have dropped the ball on, but we will circle back around and connect back into, which is bonus points and how bonus points connect into this entrepreneurial journey and build a bridge from the DeFi game and how you're operating in that game to how you can support these creators so that ultimately they can go on the same journey that TRESR has been on. And we want to create kind of a revolving door between those two things where you can consistently double down on the creators and the brands that you think are interesting and be rewarded for doing that and be rewarded for driving other people's attention into those projects. And so the thing that I think that we can speak to on the DeFi side more is making it more fun for people to be playing the psychological game of the DeFi, because right now it's primarily just a math game. People look at the calculator, they determine what the most optimal path is, and they're not actually thinking about what the other moves players could be. A few of you are, and arguably you're doing better than everyone else. I think we can do a better job of creating badges and tool tips and things that highlight some of the psychological things to be thinking about. And a leaderboard, what helps convey this without having to give it so much intellectual language of why certain moves allow you to, in the context of a leaderboard, move 30 spots instead of just 3. And so those are things that I think we can dial in more. And it plays into the function versus form. Functionally, the DeFi game has been working for the most part as intended and has been a really good model for us to keep people engaged on a regular basis with the project, keep people checking in with Discord. That's the purpose, is that when there's aligned incentives, people want to continually check in on the things that they're being incentivized for. Now that we're moving to form, we can think about how to bake all of those actions into that translation layer, like we were talking about. What is the operating system version of that allows for TRESR tech to be utilized by other people? So this would be people being able to utilize things like prize season, people being able to utilize the way that we have incentivized the bonus pool. Those are all things that really should be open source contracts that other projects can tie into and bring into their apps. And so I'm not saying that this is going to be something immediate, but some of the psychological factors of the DeFi game that would make the final 6 to 8 months of the 156 million in TRESR still to be distributed maybe more fun and create a little bit more competition would be implementing a leaderboard that perhaps as a toggle between who the top players in the DeFi game are, who the top bonus pool people are, who the top creators are in the e-commerce, so that we can socialize a little bit how people are engaging with the game. Because those of us who have been here for 4 years, we need to be, that should be broadcast, and we should be socially rewarded for being active players in this game. And that's something that we haven't done a good job of highlighting those people. But I think this new form-based system that we're envisioning allows for more of that on both sides, the experience side and the DeFi side. Would you agree, Andrew?
100%. As you said, like, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I still need to get up to speed with the whole DeFi game and the keys and tokenomics and everything that goes with that. But I have seen this. There is a massive social element around the TRESR game that is alive here that is not alive elsewhere. So being able to bring more of that social element and reward socially as well as from the other sides of things, 100%. Some of the other things, you asked the question before of, as a newcomer, what do I see? Some of the other things I see that's been extremely useful and what I've had to learn quickly as well is the investorship landscape within the whole Web3 sides of things is still up in the air. But one area that is always scrutinized on is securities. So if you structure your token more as a security, then you're going to be a lot more scrutinized. And where we've been able to circumnavigate that is the fact that the token has been more of a game and a utility token. And those are two things that don't get as much scrutiny as securities do, because it's for different reasons. It's more considered business than investment. So we've kind of seemed to have been able to navigate around that by keeping it down that path. And I think that's a very useful thing to keep it down. But what I also see as a benefit is everything that's been done with this whole game sides of things. I'm also noticing that other Web3 projects are having to add that whole gaming function on the sides of theirs as well. So everything we've got here, dig through it, let's model it out and support creators to have this dualistic nature to their projects, where it is the whole creative IP and being able to get that out there and building a community, but then also building the super fans in so that they actually get multiple benefits from it. Partially, you could do it through the whole points and potentially receiving commissions or royalties. And that's keeping it as utility token based sides of things. But then there's also that social element of I'm in there and I've actually been a part and helped bring this into existence as well. And what I've seen when I've looked at many different industries, the areas that are successful, they understand the dualistic nature of things. This actually exists in current Web2 economy. Banking and insurance are the dualistic elements that actually support this flywheel for going further up. So having it as this investorship game type piece and the projects itself, that's, I believe, is going to be the dualistic nature that's going to create the flywheel for going in further doing it. And it's much better than Kickstarter. I love the idea of Kickstarter, but it was usually just sell content sooner. Whereas you can do that too, but we can do it through cards even for a project, trading cards. But having this extra piece where super fans are playing in the game and they're staking something, like adding to the liquidity pool and creating the tokens and everything to help drive it all going further forwards. I see so much potential in that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us who have been here through the thick and thin of this understand that that's obviously a unique component of what we have here. And really what we're talking about moving from function to form is componentizing that in a way where it doesn't just serve Treasure, it serves other people. Because it's seen, if you've been in crypto long enough or Web3, yeah, every NFT project is basically operating like a Kickstarter. The problem is they have no business plan associated with that. There's no rails on exactly what the stair steps should be for them to elevate the project, which is why everything ends up failing and you have so many dead NFT projects. We talk to a lot of those projects and we're trying to extract information from their nervous system as well on what they need and what went wrong. And I think a lot of times it is communication training and really just giving them the breadcrumb path that they need for what their next step is, because so many people that we talk to don't know what to do next. And we're painstakingly trying to map out what those steps are so that when we meet with someone again, we can have them self-identify where they're at on this journey that we've outlined and immediately either have them backfill the pieces that they don't have yet, or start moving forward from the proper place where they know exactly what they need to do. Because so many people in this space that have become burnt out, most of it is because they did so much spinning of their wheels, and that's taxing on the nervous system to be taking action and making no forward progress. I know that intimately. However, if you can give somebody a series of actions that actually gain traction, and I think we're doing a good job as we interview all these different projects to extract what those pieces are, it's revitalizing to somebody to be able to take an action and get traction. Progress is its own energy fuel. And that's really what we want to start offering people and componentizing all of our different things so that people can connect into that and not have to go and find a developer that ends up rugging them or ends up not doing what they said they were going to do. Like that's such a common issue in Web3 that I think there's a lot of that we can solve for. I've been saying that we could solve for it for a long time. And we keep moving forward until the vision comes into fruition. And I think we're very close to that. And ultimately, we just have to keep evolving. For those of us who remember the Jade process, we're in a constant iteration. And I do think that we're going to actualize the full dream of the white paper and beyond, and be fertile soil for projects to come and plant their roots.
I would just love to say that everything I've seen in the community is awesome. Like how much everybody's in participating and sharing and involved in it. It's just an amazing community with it. And I know there's a big focus on, well, sell the keys to be able to get some more money in. One of the other ways to actually contribute, considering that John and I are committing to buying the keys ourselves, if we can get enough funding in through this other venture sides, is if you know people that are needing marketing and SEO services, send them to John. Because the more we can build out this side as well, the more we can, it buys more of my time to be in it further and go digging deeper in it, instead of having to look at, well, how else do I get some funding in while still trying to keep this going? And it also allows us to just buy the keys, and therefore we're keeping this funneling element. And that way, if buying the keys is great for yourselves if that's what you need, but if you want to still contribute and support us to go even further with it, just some referrals on marketing and SEO will make a massive difference.
Right. Which is what I've been doing for 20 years now, and really, doubling down on that side of things, because Web3 is somewhat uncertain right now. People are less willing to part with their marketing dollars. It's why we focused on events and really IP projects that have the capability to tap into Web2 distribution, because a lot of the crypto projects that used to have infinite marketing budgets just their purse is completely tight right now. And so spinning back up my old agency, Awaken Local, where I was working with hundreds of local businesses right off the heels of my work at Google, to help them grow online, to get leads. This is just another way for us to accelerate the project. And it's really doing that ancillary work in addition to being a project lead is the reason that I've been able to keep showing up every day for 4 years without really making too much money from NF Treasure revenue itself. There's enough connections that I've made in this community that allows me to consistently bring on client work. But now, with Andrew handling the project management, I can really double down on that. And I think it's just going to allow us to bridge this uncomfortable gap of extra fees with tariffs, taxes, all of these things, and get to a place where the project is fully self-sustaining. So, yeah. OTC sales, keys are great if you see the vision and want to participate in the game. But referrals on the merchandise side, we had a great referral of Another Space Odyssey, which now we formed an even tighter partnership with, and we'll announce that in the coming weeks. They are really one of those projects where we really think we're going to be able to accelerate their IP and be in a true partnership. From the revenue standpoint on how Treasure benefits from the growth of that project. So we're now under NDA with them and talking about some bigger moves that we can make together. But I think that's going to be one of these case study ventures that we're talking about that really showcases the potential of this new form-based platform that we're building. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that comes to mind. I'll be in London starting the end of next week for the Avalanche Summit. That's always a great place to shake hands, kiss babies, bring in new work. We have a lot of projects that are going to be wearing and handing out our merchandise and our trading cards at the Avalanche Summit. So the whole summit is just a huge calling card for us. And the last summit, we brought in some really A-game partners, and so looking to do the same thing when we go to London and get a bunch of photographs and make sure that we're properly capturing how we're providing value to these type of events. But it's a really good feather in our cap when these events are willing to take our NFC technology and our trading cards and put them in literally every single one of thousands of badges for people coming into this event. That's a lot of trust. Those are case studies that, as we properly articulate and write them up and build out additional functionality on top of that, it makes it easier for us to go to these other events. And that's essentially what we've been doing, parlaying the success of one project or event into the next as I'm pitching other projects. So I guess what I'm trying to say is future looks bright. Timelines are always somewhat unclear, but I actually do feel that we're going to be able to probably quote better timelines in the coming future as Andrew fully wraps his head around the entire ecosystem. But it's been great having him on these calls with clients and thinking about this from a larger business perspective, because everybody wants to build into a big vision, and that's proven the case on some of these calls that we've been on. Any closing thoughts, Andrew?
I think that wraps it up really well. One of the other things that we'll endeavor to do as we go along is, obviously there's new terms that we'll put out, and we'll endeavor to actually describe what they mean. So for instance, John's been using case study venture. That one specifically is when you have a innovative venture and an innovative idea, sometimes it's hard to sell it because people only really buy what they can see. So what a case study venture is where you either create a whole nother venture or partner with somebody on an venture, which is an ideal fit for this innovative one. And therefore you build them both out together. So when we talk about case study ventures, it is that whole dynamic of being able to go, what we've got is amazing, and there's a lot of people that see it and want to back it. But when you go to sell it to somebody for them to put their, to trust you as a platform, it can be a different type of sell. So having case studies is great, but then you get this chicken and egg thing. So creating a case study venture allows us to take a position within it and help drive and steer it exactly where we know it needs to go. And in the process, it actually takes everybody with us as we go.
Yeah. So all that said, we move forward as we have been. We continue to bean count all the sales coming in, commissions. The back end of the commission platform is kind of janky right now. That's why they haven't gone out yet, but they will go out in the next few days, and we'll be tightening that. And really the focus that I have is going to be reinvigorating this old agency that I had that was doing tens of thousands of dollars a month in revenue, just re-engaging all of those clients in order to make sure that I feel supported and I feel confident continuing to put money into TRESR. It's always nice when there's a new revenue input, and I know that that's revenue that is low-hanging fruit that we can grab. And of course, 10% of that is going to be going to these TRESR buybacks, and the whole goal is to stop ping-ponging between e-commerce and agency funding. Some months we do 15,000 in the agency and we do a couple thousand in the e-commerce store. Then if I can focus on wholesale and e-commerce, we do 15,000 in e-commerce, but agency suffers. Now we're trying to sustain both of those levels in both things, where we're doing an equal or more in each of them, so that we can actually start growing beyond this kind of $15,000 a month plateau that we've been in. And I feel really confident that that's going to be the fastest way for us to double the revenue that's coming into the project and create more predictable revenue so that we can make more long-term decisions. Right now, we're using a model that, as we're negotiating with new hires and with Andrew and myself as well, we're using a model that's loosely based on a book called Slicing Pie, in how we kind of divvy up sweat equity, what that looks like, even how these case study ventures work, like what kind of slice are we taking out of those case studies that we're investing our time into. And ultimately, the reason that we're doing that is so that we can extract the map of what it looks like to do all those things successfully and build it down into the technology. everything from psychological scarcity to the things that work in marketing to a task sheet that you get badges for taking right next steps. All of this is going to allow us to take the creators that maybe are making $300-400 a month selling stuff. Well, we all benefit when we can take that person who clearly has something that's working because they're making $300 a month in sales. How do we grow that to 10,000? That's the challenge that really moving from function to form solves for us. And it makes it easy for us to consistently take people that are joining the platform and make them money, which makes the entire ecosystem money, which allows the wheels to stay greased as we just continue to grow revenue. So I think that's probably a good place to close. Really glad that everybody got to meet Andrew, and he's put a lot of time and energy into this for no pay. And that really just showcases that he trusts the vision here, that he trusts the community and the way that we interact as a community, and that he sees the potential of all of these levers that we built out. So really grateful to have Andrew on the team and helping run the project management and operations side so that I can focus on continually growing our client base, meeting with more people, spreading the good word about TRESR, and attending more and more of these events where we really can get a lot of deals done.
And thanks to everyone for being so supportive as I've come in. It's been amazing to be able to just step in and be received.
Yeah. All right. We'll see y'all on Discord. Thanks for being here. I'll get the recording up as soon as I can. Bye, y'all.
Thanks.